Robert, wir sind live. Herzlich willkommen in der Kunsthalle Darmstadt. Ich freue mich, dass Sie so zahlreich erschienen sind. Mein Name ist León Krempel. Wir stehen am vorletzten Tage der Ausstellung Paradaidha von Robert Zandvliet. Und für uns in der Kunsthalle Darmstadt ist das eine besondere Ausstellung vom Typus der Ausstellung, an die man sich auch später noch erinnert und die man vermissen wird. Morgen, übermorgen, übermorgen wird schon abgebaut werden. Ja, da muss ich ein bisschen schlucken dann, bevor es weitergeht. Ja, umso mehr freue ich mich, dass wir zum Abschluss noch ein Künstlergespräch haben und das wird führen Dr. Invar-Torre Hollaus. Er ist Kunsthistoriker und Dozent. Er hat eine weite Reise angetreten aus der Schweiz und ich freue mich sehr, Herr Hollaus, dass Sie hier sind. Herzlich willkommen. Er kennt sich aus mit Malerei. Er hat sich mit Frank Auerbach beschäftigt, Eberhard Havekost und Robert Zandvliet gehört zu den Malern, über die er schreibt. Er hat auch über diese Ausstellung geschrieben für Brooklyn Rail. Neben mir in der Mitte von uns beiden, Robert Zandvliet. Du hast dich in einem der Videos von Ralf Görz ganz schlicht selber vorgestellt und hast gesagt, I'm a painter. Ja. Begrüßen Sie mit mir Robert Zandvliet.
Danke.
So.
Okay.
Und genau, im Anschluss an diese Veranstaltung besteht die Möglichkeit, Kataloge, also den Katalog zu Paradaidha Monolith, ein ganz tolles Buch, sich vom Künstler signieren zu lassen. Also, bis später.
Let's go. So
we switch to English. That's fine. I hope that you can follow our conversation in an appropriate manner. And of course, after the talk, you are also invited to ask questions to the artist, or when there are topics left out during the talk you are interested in, we can of course deepen the discussion afterwards further. Robert and I decided to pick out specific topics we like to talk about. You will see most of the paintings on the screen. Several of you have, I think, already joined the guided tour with Mr. Krempel, so you will have the works saved in your visual memory. Robert.
Invar, give me a good question.
Yes, I try.
Good.
We like to start with Porta, the opening work, so to say, not only regarding the title, but also the exhibition, Paradaidha. It's like a closed gate.
Yeah, probably most people know, but it comes from old Persian word, Paradaidha, and it means enclosed garden. And of course, I have many ideas about this Paradaidha thing. I will tell you later. But I thought that when I wanted to say something about a garden, an enclosed garden, a closed garden, I thought it would be the most easy way to start with a fence. Because, of course, I had a sort of idea of how this garden should look like. But I had to open the field. And so I thought, for me, it was the most simple way to start with this whole idea. And yeah, as you see, I don't use photos, or what I paint is the idea of the fence, of the gate, and I just only painted the gate just from one edge to the painting to the other edge, and it's just framework, you see. And I did it with a roller, a small roller. I did it very direct, as you can see on the raw canvas. You can see it over there on the raw canvas, and it's just, vertical and horizontal bars. And so the first thing I did was paint the fence, and I did it in a very quick, sketchy way. And at some places, the roller didn't have any paint anymore, so there are sort of gaps in between. There was not a particular reason for me to do it. It was just a quick thing to do and to see what happened. And then, of course, after the first step, I had a look. And then I thought, okay, then I will paint a sort of garden behind it, and I had all kinds of ideas. But I thought, okay, first maybe I'd do a sort of easy way, in a sort of that you see a field and you feel a shadow, and maybe it's something like trees in the background, but on a very, very sketchy way. And I did it with very transparent colors. And then the idea was to continue to make all the details in the landscape behind. But at this point, I stopped the painting because I thought it was better that it was, because it already, let's say it was already working, that the most important thing was the fence and not what's behind it, because in the next paintings I will talk about, or I would paint the garden. So what I actually like about it, that the fence isn't completely closed. It's already opening up, because there are gates in some of the barriers. So yeah, for me, I think that's the mystery of the painting.
So the motif shows us a closed gate, but the painting itself, or the paint itself,
the paint, but also
open.
the image. It's the image itself, because it's already opening up.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a sort of promising first image. And I think it's quite different from the other paintings from the series which came after, but for me it was the first one, and for me it was clear that it had to be in the exhibition, and also that it had to be the first painting you should see.
We will come back to the garden topic, or
later
to the Paradaidha works which are shown in this room, but first it's I think also important to talk about this distinctive separation you made between screen and field. There are in the back room there are several of the earlier works showing a cinema, a TV screen, a film roll. So many of these screen works are about. Or do you want to continue?
Maybe we have to
Robert?
talk about a little bit about when we made the exhibition, and I, together with León, we made a sort of plan, and was already the beginning the idea to have the new big Paradaidha paintings in a big room. And then I had to find something for the back room. And together with León, we decided to have earlier works in it as well, that it's a sort of small retrospective. And because we worked for 3-4 years on this exhibition, during the Paradaidha series and during the whole idea and the conception of the exhibition, I figured out maybe it would be interesting to show some works which are has not only the beginning of will give a sort of insight of what I've done before, but also works which have influenced me for this series. And in my early career, I painted several images of screens. One of the Oh, we can show you. This is this is almost 30 years old. This is just a TV. So at that moment I wanted to paint empty images, and I painted TV screens and cinema screens. And and the whole idea of painting at that moment for me was about the screen, and about that the image is something which is projected on the canvas. So this is from 2017 or something. Here the idea of the screen comes back. This is another series, the Stage of Being series. It's about the human figure that appeared in my paintings. But in the background you can maybe see, I will jump to it. Here you can see the idea of the figure. And here you can see the idea maybe of the cinema screen. So in this Stage of Being series, it was always about the human figure in combination with the screen. And this is another painting from the last room. This is the film roll. It's also about, but this is about only the color. This is about a color series called Ultramarine. But you could see here again that the idea of film and screen comes back in my work on a different way. So this painting is not really about the screen, but it's for me at that moment about the color. But I just wanted to show that the idea of the screen at certain moments in my career comes back in the work. And I could have shown many other works, but in these three it was pretty clear. So the old idea of the screen, what I said, that the idea that you project something on a canvas was the idea. But when I started to work about the Paradaidha paintings, it slowly changed in the idea of that the painting is a field. And I will come back to that later. But so in the other space, I showed several spaces, paintings about the screen, and this is one of it. It's called Lavender Mist. Well, probably León told it already. This is after a painting of Jackson Pollock. For me, even though Jackson Pollock was an abstract painting, but for me at that moment I already started to think about fields, and also the painting in print, the one of the hand. Maybe you've seen it. It's also, for me, it's more like that you see a field than a hand. Yeah, help me a little bit, Invar, because yeah, you say something.
Maybe we can also talk a little bit about how you depict or make use of the human body, like in Stage of Being. It's an abstraction or a kind of back figure. Or a reference to Caspar David Friedrich's Rückenfigur, or the imprint, it's just the palm of a human hand, which turns into something non-descriptive somehow, also a kind of landscape, or also a rather small, calculated space turns into something infinite.
Yeah, but that's the idea of the field, of course. But you were asking about the human figure.
Yeah, but that's also how you enlarge, so to say, precise screens or areas into infinite fields.
Yeah, but this comes because, for example, what's this? Yeah. If I'm not a narrative painter, so I don't want to tell a story. Maybe it sounds a little bit strange because I tell a lot, but I don't want to. It's not about my personal memory or my personal experiences. In this case, I just wanted to bring in the human figure into my work, so into the field of my work. And what I did, what Invar already said, I used the figure, the Rückenfigur from Caspar David Friedrich, because in his case there was a figure in front of the image, and I liked that idea, and I just used that. But of course, I didn't want to paint a man or a woman or something, or a person I know. I just wanted to paint the idea of the human figure. So it's a person without a history, or it's a person without a personal story. It's not about me. It's just the idea of the human figure. And these things are, and it's the same with the hand. It's not somebody's hand, or it's not, it's always the idea of the hand. And I think what I do when I paint the images, or when I transform them, I try to bring them in the painting as a how do you can say? I can think about it in a figurative and in an abstract way at the same moment, and that's also what I've always been interested in. And there's a really nice German word, which I really like, is that Kippfigur. So I like the idea that something can be figurative and abstract at the same time, that it's part of both of this kind of energy fields, that people recognize something, or they think that it's familiar to them because they see a figure, but at the same time, here, for example, if you look at it, you can see in the middle, in this case, it's a disappearing figure, but you can see the raw canvas, but you can also see the raw canvases at the edge of the painting. And for me, it has to do with one big space behind it, but it also two wide quadraten, squares, thanks. Two wide squares, and in a way for me that it also refers to Robert Ryman, for example, or I think about these kind of things, or I think about Barnett Newman, or and at the same time I think about, oh, it's nice that in the middle of the painting you see just raw canvas, there's nothing. And so I painted the space, the white space, and the rest is just nothing. So it's nothing and space at the same time. And but at the same time, it's also depicting the human figure. And I like to play with all these kinds of thoughts and ideas in one painting. And yeah, in the end, you want that the painting looks simple, convincing, but also light. That you have the feeling that it has to be like that. That it is like that, and that it always will be like that. That it's sort of self-conscious. Self-conscious, huh? Yeah.
Maybe we can emphasize a little bit also the use of light. Light is crucial in general in art history or in painting. Mm-hmm. Maybe for you as a Dutch painter even more, because in some past interviews or texts you have also explained the importance of Dutch light, mm-hmm. in comparison, for example, to Southern light, or the light in Italian mm-hmm. Quattrocento paintings you have also been inspired by, but also in the comparison of your screen and field paintings. Okay. Because in the screen paintings, I think there is more artificial light or projected light, mm-hmm. Whereas in the field paintings, it's natural light, yeah. Whether yeah. it is light or night or daylight.
Yeah, yeah. It's really strange, but I never think about, of course I knew that the screens were about electrical light and the landscapes about the natural light, but I don't think about it that way. I'm more thinking about in a way of painting. You can think about in two ways. You can paint the light, like for example the impressionistic painters did, that you see the source of light and you see the reflection on the water, and so they try to paint the light with colors, Farbe und paint. But you can also think about that the light is already in the canvas. So the canvas itself is light, and every layer you add makes it darker. And so you can paint away the light to show the light. And in a way, no, we don't have an image of this. Huh? No, I'm thinking about, no. A little bit, in this painting I did it a little bit like that. For example, the people who've seen it around, they see that in the blue, it has really small dots. And actually there, the canvas is unpainted. These stars are unpainted canvases, and the only thing I did is paint the blue. And I did it on a very easy way. I just used masking tape and made all this, everywhere was a dot in the canvas, a knot. I added it with masking tape, and then I did it with a big roller. I just rolled it over, and I painted the space. You know, the sort of, how do you call that? The blue space, the sky, or the atmosphere. Atmosphere, yeah. Yeah, okay. The atmosphere, I just painted the blue, the atmosphere, the celestial light, no. Space, no. Language. Difficult. Even though the blue creates space, it also makes it darker. And so in this case, actually two. So you have, maybe it's complicated. Here you see the raw canvas. Here it looks white, but it's really the color of the canvas, which is brown. And here it's another kind of light. It's also almost raw canvas, but I just painted over with a little bit of white. And here you see also a shadow with the sprockets. So they are just tiny differences, and both have a different approach about painting light. So here the stars really come out of the canvas, the light comes out of the canvas, and here the parts are, the light is painted. So, yeah, did I explain it correct? It's complicated, but so you can paint the light with lighter colors, or you can use the light from the canvas that comes out of the work. Maybe we have to jump to the monotypes. In the monotypes, it's even more clear.
Yeah, but maybe I can also
help me a little bit.
I bridge.
Yeah, make a bridge.
Towards the monotypes, because there is one copy of the Warwick series, Robert's first monotype he did, and several examples of the Amagabro monotypes Robert conceived 2 years ago, when you have already been working or been involved with the Paradaidha series. Mm-hmm. So you worked parallel on two different series of works, so to say. Yeah. And maybe also what you have, or what you explained in front of ultramarine. We could pick out more or less each work, because it's in each work shows something precise somehow, whether it is a screen or a landscape or the palm of a hand. But you leave it also open to the onlooker somehow. I can focus on the motif, but as soon as I start focusing on the painting or on how it's painted,
yes.
And if I realize also the variety of devices you have used, and also the interaction of colors, or also, for example, left out areas, so the canvas is not completely covered.
These are all different kind of techniques to get that done.
Yeah. So it's also in each of your works, it's the interaction of a clearly seen or perceived motif, but also of mere painting.
Yeah, it's both, because I think an image is not only about that what it's depicted, but also how it is depicted. So, because I think the way the paint applies on the canvas can tell you something about the depicted image as well. So you can play with that. That's what you mean, eh?
Yeah,
No,
and
not really.
it's also I can see also something completely different, because in the end I see, so to say, painting only or paint only.
Can you give an example of a painting?
Precise motif.
Can you, for example, for that?
From the distance, I would say the motifs are pretty clear or much quicker accessible. The more or the closer I come, many of your works they do not fall apart into fragments, but I see more and more details, the richness of colors, the richness of the devices, the brushes you have used, or also the resistance of color.
Yeah.
Some of the motifs might look from, for example, speculum, or also this reference to the Japanese bridge in the in Claude Monet's garden in Giverny. From the distance, the motifs look
Pretty clear.
pretty clear,
Yeah.
and easy understandable.
Yeah.
When I stand close in front of them, I see also, and sometimes even a rather aggressive, or aggressive is too strong, but a very dynamic paint apply. And this paint apply has an effect on the whole
image.
painting, on the whole image.
Okay, but now we are on the Paradaidha series, which is fine. But this is something new for me, because in my earlier days, I used to work with big brush strokes and with big movements and big shapes. And the Paradaidha the detail also entered my painting, so the way I've painted. But maybe we have to, it has to do with the whole subject, because I wanted to paint the garden, and what I liked about the garden was more that it's not really the garden, it's really about nature. What I like about nature is, this is something I discovered myself, when you just walk outside and you in between the trees, you know, and you walk and you see little grasses, you see branches, you see bushes, you see leaves, and you could see that all of these elements, everything has its own structure, and everything. And all these structures together, they work together. Nothing exists without the other, you know, and they all have a sort of effect on each other. And this is what I wanted to do in this garden thing, in this day of Paradaidha, that you see. What I try to achieve is that I paint a sort of, I've painted this. You know, I'm not a realistic painter, so I try to make a sort of painterly equivalent of nature. So what I try to do, I try to paint before the leaves of a willow, of the idea of the leaves of a willow, and I just came up with a sort of technique or a structure. For in this case, before I use these black dots, that it has a sort of structure, all over structure. But you can also imagine, for example, when you look over there, when you see the reflection of the water, that all these small horizontal lines give you an idea of reflection. But and what I try to do is build up images with different kind of structures which all work together in the whole image. It's a complicated story, huh? Yeah.
Which leads me also to the key topics you have wrote down when you have been involved with the Paradaidha series, which are also part of the monolith.
Shall I explain what before I start on such a series, I have to think about it for quite a few years. And what I did, I made a sort of list of points which together made a sort of framework. And I will read it down. It's the contours of Paradaidha. For example, you know, I was already into the landscape, but no horizon, no perspective, a frontal view, organic, vegetation, and then not realistic, very important. The focus on structure. And I wanted that light and color is predominant. And then there's brilliance, there's mirage. There's also, for example, the great conversation. This is something by Thomas Berry, which has been a sort of inspiration. What he meant with the great conversation is he was a theologue and also a geologue and philosopher. And what he said that we as a human, we are not able to understand the nature. We don't, if we hear the voice of the water, or if we listen to the plants or the wind, we don't understand it anymore because we're not, we lost, he said, we lost this great conversation. And I thought maybe if I'm really jump into this whole idea that everything is connected, maybe I could bring back a little bit of this idea of that we could connect and communicate with nature again, that that I understand it again. And because in the first case, of course, I paint for myself. So for me, it was important to understand again. And it's really funny. At a certain moment, I really had this feeling, at the moment, there was a moment when it was in the evening and I was at home. And I had such a strange experience that, we have different plans at home. And I was just sitting and no thoughts or at all. And I was just sitting and thinking a little bit. And at a certain moment, I watched to the plants. There was nothing going on, but I could see they were talking to each other. They make jokes, and they laughed a little bit, and they looked at me. And it was a sort of, it was a really strong feeling that they were connected. And now I see it more often, Last week I was in the Swiss mountains with a friend, and we were at a waterfall, and there was such an energy of the waterfall went down because it has been raining. There was a lot of water. But it has been dry for months in Italy. So there was. But anyway, you had the waterfall, and there were bushes, and there were trees and leaves and everything, and you could see the trees and the leaves. They were just enjoying the energy of the water, and they were just so happy. You could just feel it, or I could feel it, or I could see it. But it was just, and this is the whole, this I could see this energy, and I think this is, this is something real for me now, but yeah.
Robert, you said you are not a realistic painter. If I see this very detailed and also very reflected approach, I would say you are maybe a conceptual painter, or it's a conceptual approach with a most versatile or also free outcome. I think that's
what I do. What I did with this list, I made. I gave myself a framework. At first, I have to create a sort of. I have a question, and then I make a sort of framework to figure out what I want to paint and how I want to paint it, and what's important and what's not important. So, and maybe that's conceptual, but it's just only for the question I have, and that slowly on I have an idea. Okay, I want to paint this surrounded garden, and I don't want it to be figurative, and I don't want it to be as a landscape, but I want to see it as a field. And slowly ideas come up, and of course the light is important, of course color is important, but slowly we started with the screen and the field. Halfway the series I realized, okay, when I have no horizon, so it's not a landscape. And then slowly the idea of the field came up. And this was a sort of, this is of course, the painting is also a color field, but it's also a field of tension, of a field of energy or a quantum field or all kinds of fields. And so from that moment on, I start to think, other ideas come in this whole Paradaidha things as well. And slowly it became bigger and bigger.
Yeah. Robert, what fascinates me also since several years or many years already is how you refer to art history or decisive painters. Mm-hmm. Several of them are also incorporated somehow in your own paintings, like the back figure by Caspar David Friedrich.
Yeah,
it's also interesting that you, by Jackson Pollock, for example, you pick out Lavender Mist.
Yes.
Not necessarily one of his gesture-only works, but one of those works with a precise title, which also leads to nature.
By the way,
all over.
The title is from an art historian. Eh? It's not by Jackson Pollock, but
yes, I know.
But the reason was that, I like the
now.
title so much because the title gives such a good impression from what you could see. That was one of the reasons at that moment that I used. I wanted to make. I wanted to bring this painting into this series. I Owe You the Truth in Painting, where I made. I repainted the same kind of paintings as some of my colleagues did, to figure out how I would do it and to figure out what it means to make such a painting.
Yeah, we could talk about, or we could mention many more artists.
Yeah, we'll mention one.
Well, I mean, also for the Varric series, I think, despite the fact that this series is in black and white only.
Is the Varric series
but
also
when I see the kind of abstract landscape or the painterly gesture, I think there is quite a lot of Hercules Segers or Willem de Kooning. And I think what is also fascinating in your work is how the range of references from old masters to 20th century icons, but also some contemporary positions or also topics you are involved with, and how you are constantly looking for new pictorial solutions.
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing is, for me, it doesn't matter if the work is Chinese or it's from the Middle Ages or it's from contemporary or it's conceptual. As long as I like it, it's in itself it is truth, or it's if it's a world on its own, I can do something with it. And I think there are different kind of truth, and I just use then whatever I like about it. But no, and I'm quite free in. Of course, I have some periods in art history which I like more than others. For example, I like more the abstract expressionists or the color field painters, and I'm not so into romantic painting, for example. Even though my paintings are also sort of romantic, but it's in the way it's painted, I don't like it so much, for example. Yeah, it's complicated. Yeah.
Do you want also to tell about your experiences you made throughout the Amagabro series?
Okay. I can. This is Varric series. Yeah. This is a series I made at the end of the 90s, and this is the Amagabro. Let's go back. Yeah, both are monotypes. In the end of the 90s, I made this series were landscapes, and here you can see it's only black and white. And the technique of monotype is that you paint on on an aluminium plate or a plastic plate or something where the paint sticks on. And when you think you like it, you put a paper over it and you have a print. So, and you can only make one print because it's a directly imprint. And when it's black and white, it's really easy because if you make a brush stroke, where there is paint, it's black, and when there's no paint on it's white. So, and you can keep on changing till you think, okay, now I have a nice composition, or now I have a nice image. And for these kind of images, which you saw there, I worked maybe for 20 minutes, and then in a very fast way, and then we printed it. But as long as you have black areas and white areas, it's easy, and it doesn't become messy. But with the color here, this is not the best example for this series, but okay. When I made the Varric series, which was black and white, I thought, okay, one day I wanted to make colored monotypes. So it took me, for I don't know why, but it was more than 20 years later, or 25 years later, that I finally had the opportunity to make colored monotypes. And I thought, well, that's easy. I know how to make black and white, so color is also, it's an easy thing to do. But the first days were terrible because everything I did became into a sort of dirt. Because as soon as the colors mix on the plate, you get different kind of colors, and it end up in all gray, dirty, blah, 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 nothing happened. So I had to make a sort of, the monotype technique forced me to think in a different way. And I realized that I had to separate the colors. So, which is much more complicated than, because you already, immediately when you have a color somewhere, it's part of the composition, and so you have to think in a different way, much more, you have to think 2 steps in front. And it really took me 2 or 3 days or 4 days to figure out how to do it. And at a certain moment, I managed it. And then it was, I could find a sort of way in it. Because, for example, such a, I have no sketch when I start on such a plate. I have no idea. I just start with something. I start with a shape. Or maybe in this case, I think, okay, I'll paint a black rock in front. And then I start with the black rock in front. And then, okay, I have to paint the background. And then, but I use a little bit yellow here in the background, maybe yellow in the foreground. But this is all happening while I'm painting. So this is, the image is not there as long as it's printed. Can you imagine?
It's also fascinating to see that both Maler Pro and the Paradaidha series have been conceived more or less at the same time. With the Maler Pro series, I have, or when I try to remember the whole series, it's like a fusion of northern and southern landscapes or seascapes, not only regarding the coastal views, but also the light. But the perspective is different in comparison to what you did with the Paradaidha works.
But this is the Maler Pro is just landscape. So I'm allowed to paint the horizon. I'm allowed to paint mountains. I'm allowed to paint rocks or water. So it's more figurative. And in the Paradaidha other things, I have what I already said here, that no horizon, no perspective. I wanted to have a frontal view, so I have another framework.
Despite the fact that the area you work in is much smaller. It's bigger. A garden, so to say, cultivated, man-made nature.
Yeah.
But if we look at the works, there is nothing of this aestheticism or what we might expect from a cultivated garden, or also from...
No, but the idea of the garden was more like that. I like the word Paradaidha and the idea of the surrounded garden. But for me, just the edge of the painting, that's the surrounding. So it's a sort of conceptual idea.
Yeah.
And it's not that I wanted, the idea of the garden is anyway, it's not realistic. So and the garden is also cultivated, but yeah, I think you can ask some very critical things about this now.
Yeah. No, but Robert, because here we are surrounded by the Paradaidha works, and behind us there is your largest work so far, Ager.
Yeah.
In general, the Paradaidha series consists mostly of large size canvases. It's also physically quite demanding. What I think is interesting or fascinating to see that despite the very size of these works, you do not exhaust yourself in mere gesture. It's pure painting, but nevertheless, they are very structured. Can you emphasize or explain this a little bit?
Yes. Okay. Ager means in Latin is field. So after I made maybe 15 paintings in this Paradaidha, slowly the field became more and more important. And then I thought, okay, for now I have to make a really field, which feels like I thought about sort of flower field or sort of all these other ideas of energy fields and color field are in it as well. But and I didn't want a horizon, and if you look here to the other paintings, you see also other topics in it. So there's a moon, or there's a shadow, or there's a tree, or there's a bridge. But I thought, no, and now I only want to have the field. And I don't want the horizon, but I want just grasses and the only thing which end up in this painting is more or less the wind. And, but, yeah, and of course, as you can see, I started on the raw canvas again, and I started with very big brush strokes. You can see at the corners, you can still see the green areas, and I just made it this green. Oh, sorry, I walked to this painting. Here you see the big movements, the big brush strokes, but they have been here as well, and here, and here, and here. And the idea was that you have some grasses here, you have some grasses there. And so I tried to make a sort of all-over structure. This was the first step. And then slowly on, from the center, I filled it with grasses and with movements and with maybe flowers. And the only thing what I was doing, of course, I know how to paint the grass, and I know how to paint. But the thing was, I needed sort of focus because there was no bridge, there was no sun. I needed something to focus on the image, and at a certain moment, I realized that, everything is going one direction. And then I saw, oh yeah. There's a little bit of wind. And because I couldn't paint it in one day, so in one session, I needed several sessions to complete the painting, maybe 6 or 7. But I wanted to stay in the same flow. So every time, I did it maybe in 1 week, but every day I came in my studio again, and when I made it a new color, and when I started again, I said to myself as a sort of mantra, the wind plays with the grass, the wind plays with the grass, the wind plays with the grass. And it was a sort of, it's really a mantra, and that brought me in that flow, and from there on, I could continue. And the strange thing is, every time I started in the center, and from the center, it was like going to the edges. But as you can see, I kept the edges open, because I wanted that I didn't really want a composition, but I normally, in this case as well, in such a panoramic You start in the middle. And if you look in the middle and you don't see the rest, you don't know. You have no clue. What am I looking at? You have no... And then the strange thing is happening. Your eyes start to move. And in this from left to right and back. And then slowly you get in the rhythm of the painting. And I think for me that's the magical thing about this painting, that, yeah, it takes a while, and then the painting let you in. And then you start resonating with the work itself. And this is what happened. You know, it's not a realistic field, but this is what can happen when you're in nature. That first, you're standing and at a certain moment you see something, and then you follow the grass, and then you see some leaves, you know, you follow the leaves. And then slowly nature starts to resonate with you. Mm-hmm. And then, then there's a conversation again, and then we're back at Thomas Berry.
And in this manner, it's also quite logic that this is the final or last work of the Paradaidha
It's
series.
not the last, but...
or for this exhibition so far,
this
a kind
so
of
far.
endpoint, because most of the other works, they are centered, or
yes.
The center is clearly visible, and I think that helps also the onlooker to organize myself in front of the painting. Here it's not that I get completely lost, but I do not really know where to look first.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's I'm surrounded or embraced somehow by the painting itself.
Yeah.
And that's how I'm being pulled into the painting and become part of it.
Yeah, that's true. But that's what you told, that it's different than when you're standing in 2 or 3 meters in front of the painting. You see something else than when you look at from 10 or 12 meters. Then you still see the picture or the image, and when you're close to it, you're more into the image, and that's what I want to achieve. Yeah. And maybe there are more things, or there...
Well, there would be many things, but we can also come to an end.
No questions?
Then we leave it like it is.
Yeah, it's okay. I thought maybe all critical kind of questions will pop up, but... Okay, you're welcome. Yes?